Welcome to a very special episode of Talking Kotlin, everybody. My name is Seb. Today, I am your host, and I am here with a very special guest who usually also happens to be a host on Talking Kotlin, and that is Hadi Hariri. Hi, Hadi. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Seb. Thank you for having me. And you finally managed to kick me off as host, didn't you?
Well, you're still in the show somehow, right?
Yay!
I really thought those balloons would have been for the 5-year anniversary part and not
Oh,
the
yay!
fact that
I still have them. Yay!
But yeah, special episode. It's just the two of us. You know what that means?
Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. You and I.
Exactly. That means that singing segments like this are going to stay in the episode. That means that no weather segment is too long to be cut. And it means that we get to do all the segues that you have ever envisioned.
Yes, this is the segue show. We're going to call it the segue show. We're going to talk about everything today apart from
Kotlin.
Exactly.
That's what's probably going to happen. I feel it would be the correct way to actually open the show. How is the weather today?
Well, this segment's brought to you by Cyan, which is our hydroalcoholic gel for hands. The weather today is actually kind of sucky where I am. It's a little bit cloudy, and it's windy and it's cold. It's like I think around 12 or 11 degrees. So I'm hoping it cheers up. Like this whole, I keep saying this, but I can't live in a place where I don't see the sun every day. Yeah,
fair enough. Didn't you live in London for quite a while?
I lived in London and I lived in Cambridge actually more. And my mother actually, we used to come to Spain for vacation, and she was seriously depressed in the UK. In Cambridge, and the last year we came here to Malaga, and we go back home, and she's like, you know what, screw it, we're packing up, we're moving to Spain. I can't live here anymore. So that's a true story, by the way.
Well, and you're still in Spain with your family now, so it seems like that was a good decision all around, huh?
Yeah, like screw it, I can't live here, let's go to the Sahara, it's more sunny there.
That'll be the next step. Yeah.
Yes.
So here in Munich, we're currently having fog and more fog. There's the big construction site next to my house right now, and they have like huge spotlights everywhere, so it looks very like post-apocalyptic. Well, no, it looks just like post-apocalyptic, I would say, because there's these weird, like, it literally looks like you're under surveillance, and some of them are green, and it's very eerie, I would say.
Yeah, we are actually under surveillance. It's called the phone, but yes, other than that.
Damn,
it's all good.
The phone.
Yeah,
we'll talk about your story in mobile development later.
Am I allowed to do my German accent on this show today?
You know what? Because it's Talking Kotlin's birthday. Yes, you're allowed.
Yeah, das ist not good. Yeah, is that no?
You know what? I'm not even gonna correct you.
Das ist nein gut.
I'm not even gonna correct you. That's how tolerant of your shenanigans I will be today.
Thank you, Seb. Thank you.
So, Hadi. It's
Shenanigans brought to you by Esselt from Aldi.
It's been over 100 episodes of Talking Kotlin. How does that feel? I mean, I've only been here for the last couple, so.
Okay, so did you ever see that episode of David Letterman where he had Ricky Gervais on the show? And David Letterman's like, yeah, I've been doing this for 25 years, and Ricky Gervais is like, why like, why are you doing this long? Why aren't you bored? No, I can't say that I agree. I actually, it's been fun. Time has gone by really, really fast, and to your full credit, Seb, I think that first of all, switching to YouTube, and more importantly, having a co-host, and even more importantly, having you as a co-host, has made it so much better for me as an individual. Because, like, I've always enjoyed doing the show, but now I really enjoy doing the show and chatting with you, and especially with our sponsors. You know, now that we can do the whole sponsored segment. So time flies when you're having fun. No pun intended there.
I feel like we need to get some actual sponsors so you can live out, your
My dream,
fantasies
yes,
your
exactly. Like
fantasies, and we get paid. That would be the best.
Yes. Yeah. This segment's brought to you by the pig.
The pig. Okay. Oink oink.
Oink oink.
Anyway. So take us back.
Because there's an oink in all of us.
Yeah. So take us back a little bit. Something must have moved you to the point where you were like, I'm gonna start a podcast on Kotlin. How did that happen?
To be honest, I can't remember. My memory isn't what it used to be these days. What was the question? It's not that bad. I think that at some point I thought to myself, okay, so there's these, it was the very early days of Kotlin. I mean, I know that it had been around still for around 5 years since the announcement and stuff, right? But it hadn't gotten that much. It wasn't mainstream as it is now. I mean, even now you can't say it's mainstream. Like in certain segments, it's mainstream, right? And I had seen, and I'd always wanted to kind of like do a podcast. And I saw some other podcasts around languages, and there was a friend of mine that had recently got into Python, and he had actually started learning Python via podcast. So he had actually put together a podcast to learn Python. It's called Michael Kennedy that talk Python to me. And I thought to myself, hey, you know what? Maybe we should do something around Kotlin. Now, back then, again, it wasn't that well known. And my biggest fear was like, do I have enough for episodes, right? And I remember that I made a few mistakes in preparing for that. So I kind of like ran it by a few people inside JetBrains, and they're like, yeah, okay, yes. Some said it's a good idea. Some said, well, yes, but even so. But I decided to go ahead with it.
And now, well, we it seems that there was enough content because it did manage to fill a lot of episodes.
Yeah, but like one of the things that I did early on was to make sure that I wouldn't, because I have a very bad habit at times, which is I get so energized and to start something. And when you do that as a series, and you're like, after the third one, you're like, oh, I can't be bothered anymore. That's why I've only written like a couple of books and no more. Because after you get like through chapter 7, it's like, do I really have to finish this book? Do I really have to finish it? You know that, right, Seb?
Yeah.
So one of the things I said to myself, I said, I tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a sheet of up to 1 year of episodes. And I thought I'll release one every 2 months. And then what I did is come up with topics and then reach out to every potential guest and say, hey, I'm thinking of starting a show. If I do, no commitment, but if I do, would you be willing to come on the show and maybe talk about this? Once I had like 30 or so signed up, then I said, yep, I'm going to start the show. So, and then from there, it just kind of like grew as Kotlin grew, more ideas were coming, more topics were coming up, and then we just kept bringing more people on.
And who was your first guest?
It was Andrei Breslov, obviously. And the first one, I mean, this show. We and I have been doing it for a while now, and you know that I think the most important 2 words of this show are wing it, right? Because we basically wing it. But the first show was meticulously planned. I had all of the questions ready, and I knew what I wanted to ask Andre, and I had written it all down, and away it went. And I asked it, and it was one of the most popular shows, but it didn't feel natural to me. I didn't feel like I was so worried and nervous about everything going okay that I just felt so tense, and I didn't like this having to ask a whole bunch of questions, because apart from other thing, it involves research, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I just want to wing it. So yeah, I only did that on the first episode. Now the second episode, that's another story. Oh.
So since we're already here, do tell us the story of the second episode.
So the second episode was with Jake Wharton, and I was new to all of this, right? So I bought myself a Zoom X6 device.
So that's
which is
an audio interface, right?
Yeah, it's an audio interface that records on a memory card, and you have different channels, right? And I had these amazing microphones and everything, and the primary reason for this was also because I wanted to do this on the road, right? I wanted to take the mic and do it on the road, so I had everything set up, and then I invite Jake, and I had a horrendous cold that day, a horrendous cold. Like my voice was like this; it was so blocked, right? And so Jake comes on, and he's like, "Hey, so do you need me to record on my end?" I'm like, no.
This was a remote recording at that point.
Yeah, this was a remote recording. I'm like, no, don't worry. I've got this amazing audio input. It's recording my channel. It's recording your channel. It's all good. You don't need to worry about recording on your end. Because a lot of times when people invite you to a podcast, back in the old days, it was like, yes, you need to record on your end as well, whether it's as backup or to get the original sound. And so I start to ask questions from Jake, and it's going really well. And I haven't written anything down, and it's just like going really well, right? And we're 12 minutes into the podcast, because I can see the timer on the thingy, and then suddenly I look at the timer, and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't press record. It's just going without record. And I'm like, what do I do at this point? Do I stop Jake and say, hey Jake, I'm such an idiot. Can we just repeat the whole thing, because I didn't record? And what had happened is that Jake had said, well, I'm just going to record my end just in case anyway, right? So the show finishes, and I'm like, now I've got these sweats, like, right, like, what am I going to do? I can't start the show 12 minutes in, right? So I say to Jake, I'm like, hey Jake, by the way, throw me over that recording, just in case I need it. So he's like, yeah, sure. So he sends me the recording, and I'm like, thank God for that. I said, if it's good quality, I'll just use that, right? So I start listening to it, and of course, Jake's recording has only recorded Jake. Mm-hmm. It hasn't recorded me.
Yeah.
So now I've got my own recording where I did hit record 12 minutes in, and then another segment which is Jake, and it's only his voice. So I'm like, okay, back then my memory was better. I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to Jake's responses and ask the questions again. And I've got to do it now, because if I don't, my voice is going to change, because in a week I won't have a cold anymore, right? So I had to actually sit back, listen to Jake's responses, and then ask the questions, and then do a whole bunch of editing and put it all together. And the end result was smooth. You couldn't even tell that this was like 3 different audio inputs and stuff, and it was just like, yeah. So that was I sweated a lot on that one.
But that sounds like proper show business. The show must go on.
The show must go on, exactly.
Even if we have to splice it together from 3 different audio sources.
Yeah.
So you said you were planning on taking Talking Kotlin on the road at some point. Did that ever happen?
It did. There was a few episodes that I would record at conferences. But then, to be honest with you, as the internet improved, as there wasn't any video, right? It was just audio. So then the question was like, what is the benefit of doing this in a crowded place if I'm just interviewing a single person, right? And then, I travel a hell of a lot, and I like to travel light, right? We're very much the same, those that travel. And this is bulky, right? Because it's a little box, but then it's got extra batteries you got to pack. Then you got to pack the microphones. Then you got to pack the cables. And then suddenly a 3-day trip, I need to take 2 carry-ons because it just doesn't fit, right? So I didn't do that for many times. And then, as I mentioned, like, the connections and the software started to improve, and it's just like, yeah, we could just do this anytime that suits both of us.
I think, again, now that everything's remote anyway, probably it wouldn't have made that much of a difference anyway when
Yeah, obviously. I mean, right? Yes, I also realized that, in 5 years from now, there'll be a pandemic, so I better not get used to this and just keep it to the bare minimums.
Yeah. You can see the future.
Totally. If only I'd known this, if only I'd seen that future in the stock market as well.
There's still time, we said already, well, there was a point where you said, I really want to do a podcast on Kotlin. But that probably means that you were already convinced at that point that Kotlin would be like the next big thing that you would want to pour your energy into, right? So how did going back like one step further, like how did that happen? How did people bribe you or convince you to get on board with Kotlin like in the early days?
The first time that this happened was back, I can't remember when it was, but it was like a year after the announcement or something like that. And I hadn't even looked at Kotlin. I haven't even played with Kotlin or anything like that. And Andre pinged me one day, and him and I didn't really know each other either, right? I mean, he'd heard of me, I'd heard of him, but we weren't really talking or communicating or interacting much. And he pings me. He's like, "Hey, Hadi, so listen, I hear that you speak at conferences, and I've been invited to give a talk at OSCON in Portland on Kotlin, but unfortunately I can't go. Do you think you could give the talk?" And I'm like, "Portland? I've never been to Portland. Absolutely, I'll give the talk. Yes, absolutely." But before that, I'm like, "Oh, Andre, well, I'd love to, but the thing is, I don't know Kotlin. I don't even know Java. I don't even know the JVM." And he's like, "Yeah, but it's in 1.5 months." I'm like, "Oh, okay, then fine. I'll have enough time to pick all of that up." So it was in 1.5 months. So I started to play with Kotlin, and I started to put together the talk. And I remember that I made a tremendous mistake because I came from .NET and C#, and I was used to the conventions in .NET and C#. And it was only after the talk, and this is that I did send the Andre the I can't remember if I sent him the samples or not, but at some point a few months later, he comes to me and is like, "Oh, by the way, Hadi, in Kotlin, we follow the convention of lower camel case as opposed to upper camel case that you do in C#. So please try and rename your properties." I'm like, "You could have told me this before." But anyway, I put together samples, and I was fairly confident that I know enough of the language, because back then, like, the surface area was also kind of small, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't know much about the JVM. And in fact, one of my most successful blog posts are the minimum survival guide for the JVM, which I wrote out of my own frustration of coming to this JVM world and not understanding anything. So in that blog post, it's like a complete guide of what is the JVM, what is the JDK, what are languages, what is Java, what is all of these things, right? You can find that on hadihariri.com. And this segment's brought to you by hadihariri.com. So please subscribe. So
to what?
I don't know anything. I'll put a subscribe button on my website. Okay. So anyway, I prepared and I went, and I go there and I'm like, okay, well, not a big deal. Kotlin, no one's heard of. It should be okay. And I go the day before to look at my room, and I've got this room that fits like 800, 900 people, right? It was massive. It was like so huge. And that's when I started to shit myself, right? And I'm like, this is just going to go horribly wrong. And the next morning I go to the room, I'm ready there. And at the end, like 8 people came to the talk in a very, 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 very massive room. And I gave the talk, and I got the feedback that everybody would give you at those early days. Well, this looks a lot like Scala. Why not Scala? Or this looks a lot like Groovy that has static typing enabled. Why not Groovy? And then after that, I kind of said, you know what? I kind of like this Kotlin. It's kind of more, it's like C#, but more concise. And it's like JavaScript, but static. And in a way, it was really like that. And I was doing quite a bit of JavaScript back then, right? Because I kind of went from C# to JavaScript to Node.js for a while, and I was doing JavaScript, and I'm like, this is really cool. So I started to get more into it, and and then at that point, I just kind of picked it up, and it started to become a thing. There was a lot of pushback from people externally. Like every time you would go to a conference, I remember the next conferences that I started to submit to, there was like 2 people in the room, or 8 people in the room, or 10 people in the room. And I started to go to .NET conferences showing Kotlin. And there I started to get a little bit of traction, because many people that were .NET developers, they weren't specifically there because of .NET over JVM. They were there because C# over Java. They prefer C# to Java as a language. So when they start to see Kotlin, they're like, "Oh, this Kotlin thing is actually quite cool." And yeah, so that's how I kind of like got into it, and stayed with it since then.
So you mentioned beforehand that you were writing some JavaScript and Node.js, I guess, with a bunch of Express.js as well, right?
Yes. In fact, I even did a course on Express.js, and this segment's brought to you by. No, yeah, I loved Express.js. I really did. I loved it, and in fact, Wasabi, which was a framework that I created, was basically Express.js, but in Kotlin. That's how Wasabi came about.
So the reason why I actually brought this up is because I understand that Wasabi, through a couple of twists and turns, then somehow ended up to be Ktor.
Yeah, so I mean, Wasabi was my way of learning Kotlin more, and also experimenting with what was possible with the domain-specific language aspects of Kotlin, and also because I loved Express.js, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, why not put all of these things together and create some kind of server-side framework, right? That was after my adventures with Spec, which was a behavior-driven development framework, which I did in Kotlin. Then what happened is that coroutines came out, and Ilya Ryzhenkov, one of our colleagues, as you know, was also experimenting with DSLs, and was also experimenting with creating like a HTTP framework. And he decided to kind of like do that built on coroutines a little bit, which Wasabi wasn't using coroutines. And then I thought, well, okay, let me try and convert Wasabi to use coroutines. And then at some point, I'm like, it doesn't make sense to do this, right? It doesn't make sense for 2 people at JetBrains to be working on 2 different projects that are essentially the same idea. Mm-hmm. So Ktor was being used internally at JetBrains at the time for some product, which then eventually evolved, although it didn't evolve. I mean, the idea evolved into space. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to discontinue Wasabi, leave it there if anyone wants to use it. And there were people actually using it. And I'm going to put my efforts into Ktor. So I didn't at that time actually get further involved into Ktor. I just, started to do some advocacy for it and stuff like that. I wasn't part of the Ktor team. That came later.
Yeah, and I think like that connection has kind of closed itself again recently. I think you've been the Ktor team lead for how long now?
I think just over about a year. About a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So looking at it from like the higher distance, it is quite the funny story to see a C# and JavaScript developer give a talk about a language on a platform that he's never seen before, who then goes on to create frameworks which influence other frameworks, which build the basis for some of our newest products at JetBrains, but also then you end up still as the team lead of that framework again. It's quite the story, isn't it?
I've never thought of it that way, but yes, I could actually write a biography.
It's all
Seb,
connected.
as soon as you finish that book you're writing, how about you write my biography? We'll have every other chapter will be about the weather.
Sounds great.
Yeah, why not? We should do that. We should definitely do that. Yes, I like the idea. Yeah. Yep. I've sold you on it. There you go. I've sold you on it.
Excellent. That is how you convince people. It's by telling them that you convinced them.
Yes. And this segment's brought to you by this squiggly little thing that my kid made for me out of plastic.
kind of coming back again to your whole career as a Kotlin developer advocate, right? From the beginning to the, are there some points that really stand out to you during the journey that you had with Kotlin over the last years?
Well, obviously there are some very memorable moments for me that are wonderful memories. Like I'll always remember that first talk. I'll always remember the first talk where I had a lot of quote unquote hate and pushback also from non-believers. And then, it's opened so many doors for me, and it's allowed me to do so many different things, right? Like, for instance, Kotlin Conf. Kotlin Conf was, an amazing experience to put on a show for 1,200 people. It was also very, very scary, right? And then, of course, I got to do several Google I/Os, and the first Google I/O was really, really exciting. And the whole announcement at Google I/O, which unfortunately I actually missed because I was on a plane to Google I/O, was really, really exciting. And being involved somehow in knowing that announcement is going to be made, and the decisions and the back and forths, and it was great to be part of that.
And you were also on stage on Google I/O, right?
Yeah.
I can imagine that was also a whole different scale than usual.
That was, and I remember we were at that I/O with Max.
Sorry, when you say Max, you mean Max Shafirov?
Yeah.
I assume.
So,
CEO of JetBrains, for everyone who does not know.
Sorry. So we used to we were staying at a place which was sufficiently far away from Google I/O. I mean, it was like an hour walk, right? Mm-hmm. And every morning we at a conference, what do? You go to the conference, you eat, you drink, you eat, you drink, eat, and drink, right? So we say, okay, you know what? We're going to walk to Google I/O every morning, right? And it was like an hour walk.
Cardio. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so every morning during this thing, and I arrived already the day after the announcement, and I think I arrived on a Wednesday or something, or Tuesday, and my talk was on the Friday. And I was really, really nervous. I mean, I was really, really nervous. I mean, I'm still very, very nervous every time I give a talk. And I think that's absolutely a good thing, right? To be nervous. But for this particular one, I was extremely nervous. And I had decided to do live coding, right? I didn't want any kind of slides or anything like that. I just wanted to do live coding. And I had to put together a story with the live coding that would make sense. Mm-hmm. That there was a continuity, which at the same time would somehow highlight all of the features that I wanted to talk about in Kotlin.
Yeah.
And so, on the Wednesday and the Thursday and the Friday, and well, not the Friday, but the 3 days during this walk, I kept going over the ideas with Max, right? Okay, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to show that. And then, he was great because he was always giving me feedback well, what if you don't, do this instead, or lead that into that, right? And it was really, really helpful. But I was still so damn nervous, to go on that stage. I mean, I think it's probably one of the most nervous times in my life in public speaking, because it's also from the stage. It's from outside, it's overwhelming. Right? When you look at it from the outside of the stage, it's very overwhelming because it's a very big stage. When you get on the stage, it's actually not that overwhelming, right? Because it looks much smaller than it is. I mean, it's not. Yeah, perception is different.
Okay.
But yeah, it was nerve-wracking time, and of course, I screwed up during it, as everyone famously pointed out, many times. So yeah.
But still, I think that's probably one of the most. I still remember watching your talk on Google I/O, and I was I was still in like disbelief that this weird niche language that I had found a while before was now up on the big stage with a name like Google behind it. I was truly impressed, and I think this was actually one of the first times that I saw your name as well. One of the other times that we almost crossed paths, like way before we actually ended up meeting. Because you, I think, together with Sveta Isakova, one of the other developer advocates in the Kotlin team, you did like dev nights or something like that in Munich, and you came to my university, and you actually apparently you gave a talk.
Yeah. So you're talking about the TUC, right? The Technical University of TUM.
Yeah, TUM.
Technical University of
TUC is a
little biscuit cookie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah, I remember that actually. And that's another moment I remember, because I was in the room and I was talking about functional programming with Kotlin. And there were a couple of for lack of a better word, smartasses in the room, hecklers. And there was at some point one guy that was constantly laughing every time I would talk about something. And so at some point, I said to him, I'm like, please, like, share the joke. What is it? What is it that you find amusing? Do you find me amusing? Am I a clown? Yeah. What, am I a funny guy? And he's like, well, no, it's just that I've given Haskell, and the stuff you're explaining is very basic, and a lot of us here know it. I'm like, okay, so how is that funny? Well, it's just like really basic. I said, okay, well, who told you to be here? Like, there's the door. Get the hell out. Like, you don't have to be here. And he just kind of like went quiet and didn't smile anymore during the whole thing, right? So yeah, your there was a few folks there that weren't very happy.
Man, that does not reflect well on my university. Jesus.
Yeah, well, you brought it up, man. I mean, what do you want me to say?
Oh my, we're not all like that anyway.
No. But yeah, so I do remember meeting you the first time. It was in the Munich office, right?
Yeah.
I think it was one of our Kotlin nights that we had. Yeah,
exactly. That was a lot of fun at one of the Kotlin user groups.
Yes.
I think this was one of the first times where I think I asked a question afterwards, and you were like, "Of course you can do whatever you just asked me. I'll send you an email on how to." And then, like 3 days later, I get an email saying, like, "Yeah, no, you can't do that. that's not a thing."
You're just getting back to me for that university comment, aren't you? You bloody bastard.
To be fair, I mean, it's weird because like 1.5 years afterwards, so I saw the poster for the second time about this specific night that had happened, because I saw that poster once, like in passing, and I was like, JetBrains, okay, like Kotlin, new language for the JVM. I was like, why would you need another language for the JVM? You know, like the default response in like whenever that was, like 2015 or something. It's like, why? What do you need it for? I don't really care. I'm not gonna go there at like some evening. So I didn't even show up. But then afterwards, I was like, wait a second, that name on that poster that I saw, that's my boss now. And wait a second, that other name, that's my colleague. Huh? Interesting. So yeah,
that was when you. I thought we didn't put up any posters in Passing. Did you get that? Because there's a district in Munich called Passing.
Oh, that's a clever one. That's a clever one.
That is a clever one. There's actually another university outside of Munich. I can't remember what it's called. We went to as well.
Passau. Possibly,
Passau.
Actually. Yeah.
Passau. They were way friendlier. They were way friendly.
I can agree. So I also went there, and so the welcome that they had was absolutely crazy.
They loved us.
Yeah, they were all in for Kotlin, like from the get-go.
I mean, that's because I also warmed them up to the idea.
That's exactly what it was. Like, I literally got an email from them saying, like, we had a talk from Hadi, and it was so great. We would love to have another talk. That was literally the email I got. So.
And they did say that. I mean, yeah, I got an email after that, and they said your talk was still better than Seb's.
Very good. I'm glad. Still on top, baby, huh?
Still on top, baby. So yeah, but no, that was fun. Oh, I miss those days, to be honest with you. I miss those. Now I go to places all over the world without moving from my desk. I actually did a talk last week for another remote conference, and it is probably the last one I'll ever do, because it's
not the same, is it?
It's all of the pain without any of the satisfaction.
Yeah.
Right. It's all of the effort, the everything else that goes with it without getting anything in return.
No.
That obviously, yes, you are educating people, right? The 6 people that are listening to you at that time, because the other 300 will probably watch a previous recording of the talk that you gave. But it's just, no, it's not rewarding. It really isn't rewarding.
What can you do, right? Well, you can prepare YouTube content straight away.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well, do YouTube. You might as well do TikTok videos. No. No. They say never. But I really hope that I never have to do TikTok videos. But hey, you never know.
To be fair, regardless of the platform, I would love to see you dance on video. Well, there's a couple more questions that I would actually like to bring up, and because you did talk about like Kotlin Conf, like in passing, again, not the location, just on the side. How does one like say, you know what, that thing we've been building, it's been gathering traction. We're just going to whip up a conference and we're going to bring people from all over the world together, and it's going to be this huge Herculean effort, and it's going to be great. Like, how does one even start that?
That was actually over a dinner with Max Shafirov. This time I've said the whole word, the whole name. And I can't remember where we were, but we were in I think it was in the Czech Republic. Yes, I think so. And we're at a steakhouse, and we had like this meetings with a bunch of folks, and then afterwards we'd gone for dinner. And I don't know how the topic of a conference came up, but we started to discuss it. And I'm like, yeah, I've been involved in conferences before. I've done one in Malaga. It was about 120 people. So I have some experience setting up an event. Yeah, let's do something, Well, we can do maybe like, and at the time, I'd also done a JetBrains Day, which was like a multi-technology conference with about 150 people then. And I said, yeah, we could do something. I think there's enough people that would probably come to an event. So let's, maybe do something for 250 people. He's like, no, not 250, more. I'm like, okay, I don't know, what, 300, 350? He's like, no, 1,000. I'm like, get out of here. Like, no way. No one's going to come to a conference around Kotlin. It's not that well known. We know. It's like, no, 1,000. And I'm like, Max, it's just going to be like, it's risky. It's, what if we don't get people? What if it doesn't, what if 200 people show up? It's going to look really weird, right? He's like, nope, let's do 1,000. I'm sure it'll be fine. So I said, okay. And we shook on it. And he's like, yep, 1,000, right? I'm like, okay. And actually, we didn't shake on it then. We shook on it later on whiskeys, and I had too many whiskeys then. Next morning, I wake up. I'm like, oh shit, what did I agree on? So we started to go look at venues, and we said, where are we going to do it? San Francisco. We got to do it in San Francisco. Like, it's got to be there, right? I'm like, okay. So we went and we started to do it, and we had the help of some partners back then, and we started to put everything together, and then get the speaker tracks, and then again, like hey, we're thinking of putting on a conference. If we do, would you want to come and speak at it? Blah blah blah, right? And do we have enough topics? Do we have enough content? Is Kotlin broad enough to kind of like get enough tracks and get enough topics for a 2-day conference with 3 tracks and things like that? There were so many different things, right? And so we announced it, right? We announced it, and we started to get the first tickets. And we're like, whoa, look, we've announced it, and like we've received like 5 tickets in the first 2 hours, right? 5 tickets sold. And then slowly, day after day, week after week, tickets start to sell, and they start to sell, and they start to sell. And we're like, whoa, we're like at like 300, 400, 300 people already. This is really, really good. And when we decided to do Kotlin Conf, there was no announcement going to be like, there was nothing in the works around Google I/O or anything like that, right? And then of course Google I/O happened, right? Like literally the day it happened, suddenly I'm getting notifications like ticket. And I think we started to sell like 300 tickets in the first couple of hours, right?
Wow.
And then suddenly boo. And then come August, we're sold out. And I'm going to the venue and I'm like, okay, we said 1,000. How much can we push it? They're like, we can't. Like if we push it anymore, it'll blow. I'm like, no, we got to push this. We got to push this more. And they're like, okay, well, maximum we can do is another 200 people. I said, okay, let's open up for another 200 people. We opened up in a day, sold out, right? So August, we were sold out at 1,200 people. And then, of course, the first day of the conference, the night before of the conference, it was, I don't know if you want me to get into that, but I can certainly. It was havoc, right? Normally you have this like, setting everything up, then you have the speaker dinner. I'm kind of like the host, so I got to be at the speaker dinner, half an hour before the speaker dinner. The AV crew hasn't finished setting up because they only managed to get into the venue late, and then they had issues, and then there was power issues. So we were meant to rehearse the keynote before the speaker dinner. We didn't have time. So the AV folks are like, I'm like, when are we going to do this? They're like, well, we can be here tomorrow morning. I'm like, we open the doors at like 7:30. They're like, well, we'll be here at 5. Okay, fine. So, and I'm saying to folks from Google, Stephanie at the time, like Stephanie, I'm really sorry about this, but is it okay if you're here at like 5:15 in the morning? She's like, yeah, no sweat. I mean, Stephanie's amazing. She's awesome, right? And she's like, yeah, don't worry, I'll be here. So, we all go to the speaker dinner, and I'm like shitting myself that we haven't even done a proper full run of the keynote, right? Like, we don't even know how this is going to go. And so the next morning, I didn't literally sleep. Between the nervousness and the jet lag, I didn't sleep. Go to the venue at 4:35, and we're there, and we run through the keynote, and it has glitches, and then we run through it again. It's a little bit better. Blah blah blah. Anyway, I said, whatever it is, it's going to be right. Anyway, so we start the keynote, and it starts to go really well. At some point, there's this issue with the internet, which Dmitry had to do a talk. Dmitry Yemerov had to do a talk. And he's like, don't worry. I flipped out his phone, switched on his data roaming, switched onto that, I said, I'm just going to use my phone. Screw the internet. And he managed to continue with the phone, right? And then suddenly I start to hear beep, 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 beep. And it's starting to get quite loud. And the first, second, third row can hear this beep. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, what is this beep? Like, everything is going so well. What is this beep? So I'm at the back, and I'm like to the AV guys, what is this? Like, what is this beep? And they're like, it's not us. So anyway, after like 15 minutes, we track it down to carbon monoxide warning in the building going off.
Oh right? My God.
Because there's too many people in there, right? Fortunately, we're in September, so it's not freezing cold. I think it was September or October. I think it was September. I can't remember. Anyway, it's not that cold in San Francisco. So the doors are open. We open all the doors behind, so there's fresh air, and we're on the porch, so it's nice breeze. But this bloody beep, beep, beep doesn't switch off. In the end, one of the people from AV, he's like, "Oh, screw this." He goes and takes some duct tape, slaps it on the center, on the sensor. He's like, "Okay, that's it. It's done." Right? And the beep, beep stopped. So, in the video, I think if you listen, you can faintly hear the beep, beep. But if you ask anyone involved with the keynote, they're like, "What stood out for you?" There's like the bloody beep, beep, beep.
Well, I hope that was carbon dioxide and not carbon monoxide.
Yeah,
but
sorry,
yeah.
carbon
Okay.
dioxide. Did I say monoxide?
Yeah, I think that would have been
Yeah.
pretty bad.
Yeah,
But
no,
okay.
it was,
Good,
yeah, nobody got hurt in that
Okay.
keynote, apart
Oh,
from maybe
man.
Dima's phone, which fell out of his hands at some point, I think. So,
Ah,
yeah. So yeah, and then the next year we said, okay, well, we got to up this. So we did 1,300. We sold out about 2 months ahead of time. The following year we upped it to 1,500. We sold out like about a month ahead of time. And then Kotlin Conf Montreal was for 2,000 people.
mhm.
And when we put the tickets on sale, like already, I think it was only about a month or month and a half in, we had already sold over 1,000 tickets. But then, everything went to hell,
Yeah.
and we had to refund everyone.
So from a first handshake after too many whiskeys to a event that would bring like more than 1,000 people together from all over the globe, that's quite the achievement.
I'm eternally grateful to Max for having encouraged me and pushed me to do that, because yeah, it was one of the best experiences I've had. It's like, it's so tiring, but that feeling of the conference is over, and I think that anyone that organize any kind of events or conferences knows this, that when the 2 days are over and there hasn't been any screw ups and there hasn't been any major issues, and that sense of relief of like, damn it, we did a damn good job, is so exhilarating that it's worth it all.
I still remember you very frantically running around with an earpiece in Copenhagen.
That was the best part. That earpiece was like, just like, the coming place. I love that. I'm like,
Yeah.
I've been for like 3 years wanting to get one of those earpieces. I
Secret
actually
agent.
enjoy it. Like, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. I mean, one person's like said to me at one point, they're like, why are you doing this? Surely you can find someone to do this. I said, because I love it, because I enjoy it, because I love being part of it. I enjoy the process. I enjoy coordinating. I enjoy it. Why shouldn't I do it? What is wrong with doing this? I love it.
I honestly think everyone who was at Kotlin Conference felt that you and the whole team that has organized this were in there like 110% with so much passion.
Yeah, and I have to mention, like, we're talking about me here, and it's not me. Like, there was an entire team behind this, right? And there were so many folks. I mean, the initial ones we were doing, as I said, with some partners, but then the later ones, it was more, a lot of the JetBrains folks were involved, and my right hand there was my equal hand there was Varia Paulina, which one of our colleagues, and she's in charge of all events at JetBrains, and like, I couldn't have done it without her. She was amazing and taking care of everything, and as everyone else involved. I mean, you yourself remember how much work you were doing for all of the activities around the booth and the games that you and Sveta were putting together, the challenges. It's a lot of hard work. Like,
yeah, and it all comes together.
It all comes together. It all comes together, which is the great thing. Like, that feeling of all of these moving parts come together. I always say that if I weren't doing what I would do, I would love to be a roadie. I would love to be a roadie. They get paid really crappy money, but you know what the roadies are, right? The folks that are with the rock bands that go from city to city, setting up the stages, and it's just, I don't know. I just love it. I just love that.
Well, it's quite awesome then that also your kind of passion has found a way of, expressing itself in this way, combined it with Kotlin.
Yeah.
I think we're unfortunately out of time for this episode, but it's been absolutely great talking to you, Hadi. I think our listeners and viewers have gotten a little bit of a look behind the scenes of what actually has happened over the last couple of years. Because those are behind the scenes. Yeah, that's just behind the Hadi, not behind the scenes.
Oh wait,
there we go. That's what they don't want you to see.
No, it's been fantastic. Thank you, Seb, for from one side kicking me off as a host, from the other side having me on the show. It's been great to go down memory lane. Thank you.
I'm sure you'll be back in the next episode. All right.
Hopefully.
Well, with that, we are rounding out our 5-year anniversary episode of Talking Kotlin. We hope that you'll stick with us for, I don't know, the next 5 years, however long this podcast is still going to go. We hope you enjoyed it. And of course, Hadi, do you, as a special guest, want to do me the honors of telling people what they should do with this episode?
That sounded really, really rude. What they should do with this episode. What you should do after hearing this episode is hit the subscribe button, hit the notification, and of course, hit the like. Now, remember, you can hit the dislike, but it's not going to brush your own ego because no one's going to see that you disliked us. Only us. And we know we will hunt you down. We will find you and we'll make you change that dislike to a like.
Make sure you don't forget to hit the bell as well to get notified about new things. With that, we're signing off. We'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.